Hi and welcome to my channel. This is Christine Crow here, and today I want to talk about, I'm still on the subject of West Streeting, how he is looking to ban the level 2 and 3, the band 2 and 3 agency workers, the support workers, the healthcare assistants from working in the NHS. However, this still doesn't stop staff members going into the NHS if they're with a certain agency, for example. Now, I'm going to go into this more because I was waiting to see if I could find something about what happened when Streeting did his consultation, because, at the end of the day, we should all get to hear about that and what the outcome was, apart from what was already decided, although this is meant to be a consultation and it's meant to be we're meant to be speaking about this rather than it be fact and law immediately without listening to all of the other channels, the organizations, the Recruitment Employment Confederation, for example, care providers, not just the NHS, for example, as well as patients, okay, and organizations. So before, I really want this to stop blaming the agencies and the doctors for the NHS staffing problems, because this problem has been going on for many, many years, donkey's years. This is nothing new at all. But I know that the NHS is seen as a business to the Parliament, for example. But let's look at this through heart-centered, through relationships, through patients, through those that receive the care, for example, as well as the staff that are having to deliver the care, how they're feeling right now. Why are we not speaking properly with those that are truly affected, not the bank and the bank account, what the money is coming in? I understand it's a business, but I've also looked at other aspects where the profit has really been huge and it's gone to the wrong places. So I'm concerned about that. And I'm sure a lot of other people are as well. Now, I know I work with care providers who are in the UK, for example, and they are concerned about this. They are not charging exorbitant fees. So I don't understand where this is even coming from, apart from if it's a very, very large organization. But what about the small micro companies? Why are they not being consulted in this? Why are we not using them? This is like a penny pinching exercise that is going on currently at the moment, and it's unnecessary. So let's look at the change, okay? The consultation on the NHS staffing. West Streeting, he plans to ban agency workers from certain roles that has raised a lot of concerns and is biased, and they're possibly missing chances from a meaningful reform. And this was written by Kate Shoesmith from the Recruitment Employment Confederation, for example. And I want to just touch base on what she's actually said, and I totally agree with what she says. What she actually said, it makes common sense. Okay, and it says here that the Health and Social Care Secretary, West Streeting, he plans to ban agency workers from performing certain entry-level roles in the NHS. And basically that is the level 2 and 3, which is healthcare workers and support workers, which is greatly needed. And there's so much hype about this change. The consultation on the NHS staffing, it's not complete. Okay, this isn't really complete. And it's given the impression that the government has already prejudged and it's biased already the case, and at least they're bringing in a very heavy bias into what was pitched as an opportunity for a straightforward, informed conversation. And it's like everyone's blocked out from this conversation. When I look online, I can't see where this is happening, for example, but neither can my clients who are care providers, who are agency owners. Why are we not being kept in the loop? If it's going to affect care providers, then they should be able to be kept in the loop and be a part of this discussion, not the 8-figure businesses, agency owners or care providers or hospitals or, organizations, for example. What about the small guys? What about the small agencies that you were meant to protect, to give an even level playing field according to the Contract Act 2015, for example? So another thing that I'm also hearing is from the agency owners themselves is that, because I'm a business coach, so I coach care providers, care businesses, for example, and they're all saying that a lot of nurses, for example, agency workers, the roles are really stopping now. It's as if they were driving along and then suddenly stuck in a traffic and it stopped. Why is this happening now when really there hasn't been a proper conclusion? This is meant to start in April 2025. We're not even there yet, but yet a decision has already been made, and yet the people involved, the agencies involved, have not been informed what's happening, how it's going to work. There's contracts out there that have been awarded, but it's been stopped. It's being held back. Now, I write contracts for clients, for example, and the procurement process now, that is actually in crisis because it's taking longer to actually make a decision for when it's going to truly start. So that is also causing a backlog. I'm concerned about people's lives here. I'm also concerned about businesses as well. Because at the end of the day, I do not see, or my clients don't see, who are in the UK, for example, they don't see how they are a burden and ripping the NHS off. Far from the truth. Their rates are just the same as the permanent staff members' rates. And let's face it, they don't even have all of the permanent staff members in place. And those poor staff members, the permanent staff members that are working in the NHS, they are exhausted, they're tired, they're anxious, they're fearful, they're crying, they're upset. They want to run away. I'm not saying all of them, but I'm just hearing from who I've been speaking with, for example, as a whole, how they're feeling right now. So it's really disappointing that the Prime Minister gave a speech in Birmingham ahead of the recent budget. And everyone was listening. They were like, yeah, what is this? What is this? And he said, Labour will run towards tough decisions. Rip off the short-term stick-in plasters so that it can lead our country finally, but decisively out of this. Pay more, get less. It is not a good situation to be in. Furthermore, it's encouraged that when opening of the autumn budget, the Red Book claimed that the contents aimed was to fix the foundations of the economy and deliver change by protecting working people, fixing the NHS and rebuilding Britain, for example. Yes, we've got the sponsorship and there's people coming over to work in the NHS as permanent positions up to, 5 years, 4 or 5 years, for example, but they're going to need training. It's going to take time. You're not West Street, and you're not giving time for the sponsors that are coming over to learn properly, to settle in, and to work towards the NHS's guidelines, for example, in a strategic, non-rushed, clinical, safe way. You're not giving enough time. Whereas the agency workers, they already know how things work. So they come in, they'll be able to get on and do things. It will be better outcome, in my opinion, for the patients who receive the care, because the agency workers are already experienced. West Streeton, why do you not approach the agencies that are offering value for money without compromising on the quality of care being given? Why is that not being, why have they not been even consulted? Why have they not even received a letter to ask their opinion? What are your charges? What will you charge? What will you charge for this? Okay, let's put you forward for applying for this contract through the procurement portal, for example. This hasn't been done. And it's a bit concerning that this consultation's happened without really speaking to all of the people involved. Okay, and the budget really is missing an opportunity here, because there is some fundamentals of the NHS. If you address the flaws in the system, the NHS system, if you address them now, then you'll be able to see what the problem is before you add another problem on top of another problem and another problem, and you're then spending more over the next 5 years. We've got to think smarter. And in particular, these teams are procured as, and this will be an implication for the cost of service delivery, how and when patients are treated, and for the staff morale. The NHS staffing procurement is broken down, literally. There's small tweaks that are failing to address the fundamentals, and how instead it could turn for the worse. So this is the time when we need the NHS to reduce the economic burden of ill health, definitely, and support the aging population, for example. A healthier population means more productive workforce, and the benefits will be for everyone, from employers to patients to government. So that's why it really is the project of the subject of the staffing procurement needs to be at front of mind for the Department of Health and Social Care and the Treasury. The broken nature of the current system is far-reaching. It's got some huge implications here, and it deserves more than just a paragraph or two of meaningful workforce strategy. Temporary workers, like locums, interims, they play a big part in keeping the NHS on its feet. These agencies are helping you. They're helping to keep the NHS on its feet. But if you reduce, like how I'm hearing now, even now, that the agencies, the work is reduced, then saying we can't use agency anymore. And the managers of the hospitals in charge of this, they're going to be penalized if they do. I just don't understand. You know, the current pay cap imposed by the NHS England for the cost of these workers, it hasn't changed since 2018. It hasn't. And there's an important contributor here to the workforce. And yet, it's regularly being left out. And little to no attention is paid to why people choose to work this way in the first place. Using this flexible working is, really going to be difficult in the NHS for the permanent. So the contingency staffing is necessary to keep the wards open and the service running, but many NHS trusts now are making more costly decisions because of the procurement and the budget. The procurement, there's piles of, contracts that have been submitted and the deadlines have passed, and we're still waiting to hear. And I'm speaking from someone who's written contracts, who writes contracts. We're still waiting to hear, but yet it's going to seem as if it's our fault, the contract writers, why nothing has been heard yet. But yet it's to do with the NHS. It's to do with the government not making the right decisions at the right time. So it's causing this bottleneck. And then patients are being admitted into hospital. They're having to wait longer. They're waiting, like 19, 24 hours to be put on a ward. That's wrong. This can't continue. It really can't. Just because of profit margins, the NHS was created for those that paid the national insurance, for example, and it was meant to be a free system for all, for example, and it's become more like I understand it's a business. I do understand it's a business, but the way it's happening, it just seems it's not making any sense. I know that there's the NHS healthcare professionals, for example, which do a wonderful job. I've been there myself, for example, but the profit margins that are being made is just astronomical. 18 million went to the directors or the people that own it, not into the NHS. That could have gone to the staff. That could go to paying for agency when the NHS professionals can't supply, for example. Why is that not being used in that way to help the NHS? Why? Please tell me. I want to know. My clients want to know. I'm sure other people want to know as well. Yes, the NHS professionals saved the NHS 6.5 million, but there was 18 million that went to the owners that could have gone back into the NHS, because that's why it was set up in the first place. Why is that not so? Because that could pay for the agency workers. Instead of clamping down on this and then putting more pressure on your permanent staff members that you've got who are exhausted, burnt out, and leaving because they're not being treated right, why not give them a proper pay rise? Why not give them the time that they need? The current system, it's as if we're allowing to turn a blind eye. And there's other models that we could look at to supply what seems like this is a political expediency rather than a considered reform, rather than a considered NHS reform. This is like some speedy thing that's going on here that's there's no thought process that's gone out. Let's talk. Let's look at it, go through the motions, debate it, talk again, go through the motions. But it seems as if there's no choice. The hospital managers, they don't have a choice. They're being told by politicians what must happen. And then they're being penalized if they use agency. Like, for example, they won't get their pay rise. That's not right. It's like, it's just not right. So who should we be really looking at for blaming this situation that's happened in the NHS? I'm going to leave that up to you, but I would look at, the overtime, that they get paid for the overtime. And also, who do the shifts? Who does the shifts if they don't? How would a patient get the care that they need at the time that they need it? They shouldn't have to wait months and months to get treated, to go home, and then they're not well and then they have to come back in again, or they could possibly become ill or something is not caught on time. We need to have more collaboration. West Streeting, we need more collaborations. There's care providers out there that are willing to collaborate with you at the price that you actually want. Because yes, it's great and wonderful to have the sponsorship and people come over and be trained, but that's going to take time. It's not going to be instant. So who do you think is going to have to pick up the pieces? The permanent staff members that you've got there already and the managers that are there already, they're going to have to be doing this extra work, which is going to make them extra exhausted. And then they'll become burnt out and tired. And then they could quit and leave. That's not what you want. Let's all work in collaboration, i.e., use agency at a proper rate, at the price cap rates that you set, providing the staff with, and reviewing this in 3 years' time. Let's get the agencies back in and full time like there was before, and then review it in 3 years' time, because by then the sponsor staff members, the nurses, healthcare workers, for example, they're in place, they've got a rhythm, they know how to do things, everything is working well. Let's look at that. This will really work better. It will work cheaper for the NHS, and it will also bring greater number of roles back under the scope of the on-framework route. NHS staff procurement is covered and chaired by government. Set up and build a proper picture of patterns in the sustainable staff recruitment and the contingency needs. This will make all of the difference right now. So the government, according to Kate Shoesmith from the Recruitment Employment Confederation, and also I know this as well, that the 10-year plan for the NHS is due for publication next year. And I really hope that you will consider all parties, all parts of the NHS workforce and every model that supply the workers as well. We've got to look at all of the models, not just one, ban NHS staff. But, it's just not going to be practical. So let's plead to the nature of NHS serving the patients, not the politicians. So Mr. Streeting, let's all group together, collaborate, and have an open conversation directly with each about how you can fix, or we can fix, the supply of staff in the NHS so it works fairly for all that is involved. If it's to be taken seriously, we will be creating a more efficient, patient-facing NHS. Then government must get around a table with all of us before announcing the plans of reform to the NHS next year. You've got to get round a table with all involved. We all know that reforming the staffing models, the patient care, and rebooting the economy are all closely connected. So why are you rejecting conversations that can help with all of this? Why, West Streeting, are you rejecting conversations with all involved? Because agency staff keep the NHS on its feet in collaboration with the permanent staff members, and they deserve the government's respect. They have worked hard for decades upon decades. They have worked hard day and night, blood, sweat, and tears as well. So please give the care providers the respect that they deserve and involve them in it. Don't just say, we're banning agency staff. That's it. I'm having a consultation. But yet, I haven't heard anything. And I can't wait to hear from what this consultation is. Because to me and to care providers, we need to have the respect. The care providers and the agency staff that have delivered the care for years and years and years. It's like they've been shunned, as if they've been tossed to one side. We don't need you anymore. We're bringing in sponsors, which is good. I'm not saying sponsors aren't good, but you're just tossing them aside. They deserve more respect. And create an NHS Workforce Plan. The plan is, at the moment, is being based on poor understanding of the NHS staffing costs, and you're failing to present a cohesive strategy for effective use of agency. Chancellor and former Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt, which was years ago, talked about ending reliance on expensive agency staff. We've been hearing this over and over again, while also wanting to cut waiting lists in the coming years to build an NHS which can match up and scale of tomorrow's challenges. But the hard fact is that agency staff do keep NHS on its feet. Agency doctors, nurses, increase capacity within the system. That means shorter waiting lists, more appointments with GPs, and more scans and diagnosis. And they deserve more respect than the Chancellor and the NHS is showing them. There's such lack of respect for transparency in the workforce plan. And this lack of respect is evident in not talking about pay and lack of transparency with the public, that the contingency staff will have to bridge the gap until the promise of thousands of extra permanent staff are trained, because they're going to need to be trained. They're not going to instantly, boom, show up and work and know what they're doing. It's going to take like 6 months, even a year, or even 2 years to properly be trained. We've got to give everybody the respect that they deserve. And According to a long-awaited workforce plan, the extra staff promised won't be coming on. They won't be coming in stream like instantly. It's going to take time, and it's going to take years. So there's 112,000, for example, current vacancies. Urgency should be to have a strategy to make efficient and effective use of agencies now. The government could do with learning some lessons from the recruiters, who the jobs are to attract staff and who know what it takes to offer conditions to keep the staff in place. Now, I'm all for the NHS recruiting sponsors, for example, to come and do recruitment in the NHS. I think that's brilliant and wonderful. That is a good strategy plan. Although the commitment to training and commitment to flexible working, we need to encourage this plan so that the politicians don't ignore this. The patients and families need the support of the temporary agency worker, and it does cost less to the NHS banks overall. The cost of temporary workforce it's increased sharply because of the pandemic, but this is largely due to the agencies, but to the NHS increasing spend elsewhere from, staff banks, for example, to off-framework contracts where the system puts in place a manager, and this cost has failed. So agencies are good. They're not bad. Banks are good as well. The agency bank staff are good as well, like NHS professionals, allied health. But we're distracting from the legacy issues around low pay and poor flexibility offered to the NHS staff. There's no proper flexibility for them. They have to show up. That's the reason why a lot of people go to work for agencies, because they love the flexibility. They can work when they want to work because they've got families, etc. So we need to look at we need to really look at the key roles in encouraging people to really stay in the NHS, not leave, because there's people over 50 they're tired, they're exhausted, they like having to do night shifts. I know what it's like when you're doing night shift after night shift and you're over 50. Come on, you get tired. We need to look after, the NHS need to look after the permanent staff members in place. So let's look at this, please. And I just wanted to come in here and talk to you about this. I'm going to go more about this. I'm going to discuss a bit more today because I'm going to be going live at 7 p.m. UK time. I hope that you can join me. But I wanted to jump in here and just talk about this because there's a lot that needs to be dealt with, for example, and it's not being dealt properly. It's like we're putting out fires. It's like we're being, on a hamster wheel and just going round and round and not really getting anywhere. Let's put a proper plan in place. West Streeting, you are in charge of this. Please, let's do this correctly. Get around the table with all those that are involved, because you want to prevent the stress, the burnout. You don't want people to come in that have been sponsored and become exhausted and tired again, and then it's going to be one vicious circle. So deal with the shortages of the available healthcare staff. And ensure that the rates that you pay long term, that it is of value to them. So you don't want things to be changing from one week to the next because people are exhausted. Let's look at collaboration with the key to reducing patient waiting lists. And there's so much to do with the patients, for example, but we want to offer the best service possible as care providers. And the care providers that I support and coach, they believe this is so as well, because there is a massive shortage across really all sectors. The economy, that the government needs a workforce plan, not just at NHS, but most broadly. They will help build the work-life balance that we need. Agencies have shown are achievable for workers. So the agencies are building that work-life balance. And the permanent staff members within the NHS need that work-life balance, but they don't have it because you're putting pressure on them, because you're saying they can't use agency. So they're having to go into work. They're already possibly down by 8 staff members to begin with. So those that are working on the day are doing their own work, plus they're trying to do 2 people's work or 3 people's work at the same time. We've got to allow them to have the work-life balance that they deserve. So I just wanted to come in here and do this short video. I hope that this was helpful. If so, if you could like and subscribe and join me for further training and talks about this, because it is important, and this is the reason why I am speaking here regarding this as well. Please look after yourself, care providers, nurses, doctors, healthcare professionals, carers, support workers, patients, all those involved. Please look after yourself, because you matter. Have a good day, and I will see you again on the internet in my next training, my next video. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Stay blessed. Thank you.